Perfect. Well, again, everybody, thank you for joining. This is again the second. I did this last week, and we had a decent amount of interest, and then I had a ton of folks who were interested in hearing basically the same information that I shared last week. So that's what I'm going to do today. Can walk through the scope, consequences, and solutions, looking at waste and recycling fires, and also looking at it in light of COVID-19, right? So if you guys have read my article that's on Waste 360, I believe that it's still on there. I believe it might be under the popular section. But yeah, no, I appreciate everybody joining. And again, if you guys have questions, feel free to send me a text, or send me an email, or sorry, not an email. Send me a chat, or just unmute and ask me the question. I'm more than happy to stop. And now the one thing I'm going to do too, I'm going to leave this as a smaller location, or as a smaller box. I hope that's okay. The reason I do that is because, here, let me get it a little bit larger. The reason I do that is because I have a lot of the videos that, I hope everybody can see this. I have a lot of the videos that are on, and also I'm also doing the GoToMeeting. So as I do the GoToMeeting, I can't have the whole thing on my screen. So the other thing is, I'm going to do this next week as well. I've been, I don't know if you guys know of Ronald Butler. I believe he might be on the call, but he's, I call him the Jedi Master of Lithium-Ion power. We did an article a year ago. He really understands lithium-ion battery and the full life cycle. So, from, one of the things you'll see from a lithium-ion battery perspective, it's really only the personal devices that we're seeing in waste and recycling from an issue perspective in our waste recycling and our scrap metal facilities. Now we're also seeing, obviously, in electronic recycling, we're seeing this full chain. But just like just like car batteries in the past and lead acid batteries, we have a really good recycling rate on those. But what we're going to do is, Ronald's been really big in working with developing the automotive OEM supply chain. And then also he's going to speak with me at Waste 360, or at Waste Expo. And since it got moved to to August of this year, possibly September, I thought it would be good to have him, kind of do his 20-30 minute overview. And it's going to be really educational, from a lithium-ion battery. How do they fail? Where do they fail? And why do they fail? And what are the consequences of those when they do fail? So with that, I'm going to get on to, so we're looking at, if anyone is on right now, if everybody could please mute their phones, that would be awesome. I don't know, I can hear some background, so if you could all mute your phones, that'd be awesome. Hey, Ronald, you're on. Good. Hey, Ronald, how are you? All right. So again, obviously we're in unique times, and again, I'm going to focus on what the scope of the problem is. Of course, I'm going to get into what solutions and fire planning, and then obviously, the fire rover system as well. But really, what I'm going to focus on initially is, like what is the problem that we're seeing. Traditionally, I would get a lot more in detail around the scope of the fires, but I really do want to focus on the COVID specific, what we're seeing right now, where we're basically seeing trends that we've never seen before. I can kind of walk through that. I mean, I'm seeing eerie things that, in the last 5 years of doing all the research and on waste and recycling facility fires, I'm seeing some interesting numbers, and it's all going to play out. And I think that's I don't know if it's going to play out on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, but I can give you the numbers. I've actually have it up until the first week of April, and I'm seeing some things that are very, very interesting, that I think everybody would be interested in. But on an overall basis, I've been trending waste and recycling facility fires, and I've only trend reported fires in the waste and recycling facilities. So this does not include landfill fires. This does not include any truck fires. This only includes fires that are happening on site at a waste and recycling facility. And by waste and recycling, that includes transfer stations, MRFs, where we have about 4,000 of those in the U.S., according to EREF's numbers, compost, operations, where there's typically another 4,000 of those. That's a lot smaller of a number. And again, it doesn't track any landfill fires. It's also tracking C&D fires. C&D fires. If everybody could mute your phone, that would be awesome. It's C&D fires, scrap metal fires, as well. So, these are the trends that we've been seeing since February of 2016. Since, this is updated as of the 1st, and it's in Waste 360 article, but basically we've had 339 unique incidents reported in the last 12 months. We can extrapolate the 1,800 from that based on just other countries that actually report or that actually require reporting of fires, right? We don't require it. The only time our insurance companies see it is when we file a claim. The only time, the fire departments know of it is when we call them. So there's a ton of fires that are actually happening on a daily basis. And again, if you look at the industry, when I got involved in 2015, 2016, it was almost a hidden problem, right? Nobody wanted to talk about their fires. One of my biggest customers today, one of the director of recycling, I remember meeting him at Paper Plastics and Recycling, and he'll tell you the same story. But I showed him what our fire rover system was and what it did, and I said, so hey, what do you think of it? And he goes, it's awesome. Well, why do I need it? And I'm like, because you have fires. And he's like, do I? And I was like, don't you? And his comment was, well, do my competitors? So again, we spent the first year, myself and his name's Brent. If you guys know him, he's with Advanced Disposal. But basically, we spent a year really going through and figuring out, what options are there out there, from fire alarms up until full sprinkler systems. What works, what doesn't work. Sprinkler systems were developed for specific purposes. They weren't developed for early application and early detection. They also weren't developed to do final extinguishment. So we basically went through costs and all the different pieces, and and that was kind of our first pilot. Again, if anybody's on, can you please mute your phone? That'd be awesome. Or actually, I think I can mute it. So give me 1 second. Let me mute this. It looks like I can actually mute you guys. So hopefully that will help. All right, very cool. So the reason I was saying, so basically for about 5 years, we've been sharing these fires, and a lot of people were saying in the beginning, hey, please don't share all these fires. You're letting the insurance companies know that there are fires. Well, the issue is, again, the insurance companies don't look at media, right? The insurance companies are only going to do, their actuarials are looking at claims data, and that's something that I'll get into a little bit further. In 18 was really the impetus of that year when we saw fires from a couple things. One, lithium-ion batteries really hit, started to, and you can see this in the trends. I think a couple other things, obviously China's restrictions, had an issue on it, but basically as we were looking through all these trends that were happening, I personally believe in a philosophy that Volvo put out years ago, which is, safety knows no competition. So this is a safety issue. Now, again, our product might be a little bit different, but, from a fire perspective, we need to focus on this as an industry. And I believe, and I'm extremely proud of the industry, has after, in the last 2 years has really got on board with this, where like the CEO of the largest, waste and recycling company is saying that he had a transfer station fire, every day, right, for in March. So again, I think we're all saying, hey, there are fires in what we do. There's an inherent risk of fires. For years they were, hazards like pool chemicals and, lead acid batteries and aerosol cans and all the like. And then, when you add on this just freaking, this layer of lithium-ion battery risks, it's really gotten out of control. And again, you can see this in like 17 and 18. We typically see a trend during the summer. We typically see a trend during fourth quarter. And, like the first couple of years, like June, July, August, were very small. But you can see these numbers are really spiking. So it's just been very interesting. From a scrap metal perspective, last year we saw 150 reported fires, right, or 2 years ago, and I'll kind of get into that. And this year we saw kind of half that number, we saw a third of that number go away. So again, we also saw waste and recycling facility fires. The numbers went up, but we caught a lot of fires. So, I'll get into that as well. So this was last year's data. This is, how many happened in the last year was 2019, which is 343. This is by material. So again, waste is your biggest, metals a big, a big contributor. Paper, organics, plastics, C&D, chemicals, rubber, and electronics. And I'll get into the specific numbers. This is more just the visual. Now, again, this is privately reported claims data. And what was interesting is that like this, my data is on the front. This data was given, this is actual claims by, it's from Nathan Bernard with Insurance Office of America, but this was actual claims data. So compared to the reported data, and you got to think, right, from a reported perspective, it only gets reported in the media if it's a 2-alarm, 3-alarm, 4-alarm, 6-alarm, 7-alarm fire, right? It doesn't get reported if it's a lithium-ion battery that that's basically cleaned out on the that's basically fixed on the that's actually put out right away, right? So it's kind of eerie that our data was that similar. Um, you know, I think the other thing when we're looking at this, um, somebody please mute their phone if you haven't done that? Hold on one second. There we go. All right. So I think the other thing is if we look at other other countries to try to understand the scope of the problem. I mean, these are fires that happened before the lithium-ion batteries really started taking effect. This was in the UK where the EA had an average of 332 documented fires just in the UK. They have 60 million people. In the US and Canada, we have 330 million. So that's really the way that we've, that I've looked at that 1,800 number and said, okay, is it right? This is also, if you look in Japan, right, from 17 to 18, I mean, this is when all the claims came in. This is really where the data is starting to really jump. Australia has similar numbers as well. There's an article that I did on Waste 360 that gets into that. So again, this was basically looking at 26 respondents. So it was the California Product Stewards Council. And what's nice about this is it really shows, okay, and this is also 2 years ago at this point, but even then they did a survey and about, less than half were made up of the traditional hazards that I was talking about: aerosol, butane cans, chemicals, hot ashes, fireworks, paints, and all those different pieces, right? But really batteries were starting to really take off. And 56 reported that these fires were due to batteries. And I think one of the things too is that like the Fire Rover system, we started in scrap metal in security. And the reason we developed this, the founders, if you guys ever knew Brad Gladstone or, Jeremy and Pete are still part of our team. But what ended up happening was we would see so many fires, or they would see so many fires that would burn down the facility and it basically melt their cameras. So, they had a front row seat of what caused these, whether it was from an ASR pile, a shredder pile, or a shredder in feed. So all these things were what was the impetus of moving the Fire Rover system. So again, when we look at it, it's all of those specific hazards have kind of started and driven what these results are going to be, if that makes sense. So again, I look at it and basically it's about 40% of waste recycling facilities have had 40% have had a fire incident in 2019. This CPSC, when they did theirs, they basically said there was 86% of waste and recycling facilities, that they did in their survey had a fire in the last 2 years. Now again, EREF is doing a pretty large survey. So if you're on the phone and you're part of, or you've been asked to be part of the survey, please do. So I think that that's what's going to give us that 2021 data, or the 2020 data, that is really, it's getting a ton of support, and we can really look at those numbers and understand how it's affecting. One of the things that's in that report is going to be like, how long, if you had a fire, how long were you down? And this was actually from Material Recycling World. This is a European, a European survey in the UK. But basically, the crazy thing here is that when a fire is big, right? Because again, the ones that are small aren't reported, but the ones that are big had minimal or no disruptions. A lot of these facilities were down for one day. 75% of the facilities were down for 75%, were down for more than a day. Okay, so I'm getting into, this is the reported fires from last year. You know, even though waste fires are still up, we're catching a lot of fires. All these things are happening, but we still have waste fires up. Again, this is what I was talking about from a metal perspective, and in 2018 and 2019. But one of the things that I've been doing, and again, I'll share this data with you guys after, but one of the things that I've been doing is really looking at the type and the scope of fires, the scope of the issues. So from a waste paper and plastic perspective, I started combining them. And the reason I did that was because you have so many hybrid operations out there now. So it's not just a transfer station; it's a transfer station that might bale cardboard, or you might have a MRF that also handles some sort of MSW or some sort of transfer. So as I'm seeing more of these things happen, it's hard for me to figure out what the causes are. But really, at the end of the day, waste paper and plastic, there's one thing in common, right? That we need to educate the public on doing less, contaminating these less, right? With metals, C&D, and electronic recycling, it's a different story, right? We can, from a construction and demolition perspective, if a building burns down, you have all the lithium-ion batteries and all the hazards that are inside that. You can't control what's inside that. Yes, if you're doing a demolition, you can theoretically pull out all the pieces and parts, but it's not an education perspective. The same thing if a car gets in an accident, how many lithium-ion batteries are inside, how many Juul cigarettes, how many of the earbuds are in there. Again, you can't pull every one of these out, and it's not an education, right? You're not going to tell people to stop putting lithium-ion batteries in cars. So, they're dealing with it in a different perspective. And then we have organics as well, which is a smaller percent, and chemical recycling, and then rubber recycling. So this really just gives an idea of the numbers, right? I mean, scrap metal for some reason, again, there was a huge aberration last year. It was always waste that made up about 40% of the fires. Last year, it went down. The waste fires still went up, but the waste fires were down, and metal was actually, had a crazy year last year. The other thing is when I pulled it out, from a metal and a waste perspective, actually the metal fires happened in March, April, and May of last year. That's when the big hit happened in 08, right? And then the back half was all the waste and paper fires. So that was our big year in 18. Again, why it happened in scrap metal and then waste in the back half, it's a great question. So I do a like these are all by state. So if you want to see individual states by tonnage, by processing, and by incidences per average reported incidences, these are all available in. I do an annual report each year, so those are available. But let's get into like the COVID perspective, right? So the interesting thing is this March. We hold on. It's somebody. Can everybody mute your phones, please? I think if you guys could all mute your phones, that'd be awesome. And Mike just asked if there's going to be a link to get a copy of the presentation. I will definitely give a copy of the presentation. I'm also recording this if you want to see this afterwards. So let's get into specifics. If you read my article in Waste 360 this month, I think one of the things that we've seen in March, there were less fires, right? We only saw 18 fires, but of those fires, more than half of them were waste fires. And again, it's an eerie time right now because there is a lot of shutdown from specific. In March, there were weeks that there were shutdown. There was also weeks where they were taking and collecting and then shutting down. So again, it's interesting. I looked at March this year versus the last 3 years, and you're up 10%, right? Now, what's going to happen in April? My fear is that we're going to have a lot of fires, right? Now, with that being said, I went and looked at the numbers in the last week, and we literally had one waste fire, one fire period. So it's been, I mean, I've never seen a week that we've had 0 fires, and this week we saw 0. Basically one fire that occurred at a transfer station. So again, I know everyone's saying that we're getting more curbside recycling. So as we look into these, I'd love to see, it's kind of like if you look at the fourth quarter, we don't see all of the garbage that comes from the retail push at the end of the year. We see it going into the end of December and into January. So again, there's always that back half. And so if I look at March, I think the number of waste fires was up, but what caused that, right? And to me, there's a quarantine effect, right? And so what's happening is obviously you have all these people that are at home. A lot of people try to spring clean every year, but this year everyone's stuck at home. So what are they doing? I call it the 100-year spring cleaning. People are now cleaning out their garages, their houses, their attics, and all the different things. I mean, if you're looking at a lot of the media is reporting that, if you have bulky items, those bulky items aren't being accepted anymore because Goodwill's filled, and like all the different locations are filled. So again, all that material is going to go, that box that you have of all your lithium-ion batteries and your iPhones from the last 10 years, every single, electronic that you're throwing away, all this stuff, like it normally would get donated, but now the donation locations are full, and they've shut down a lot of the donation locations because you need to be 6 feet apart and it's not considered essential. So a lot of that's happening. So how that's going to affect, I believe there's going to be more fires, right? I believe that we're going to have more waste fires in transfer stations versus in MRFs. But again, I didn't, this week I checked, and honestly, one fire, right? It's crickets. So to me, I hope it's not the calm before the storm. But again, it's just the weird dynamic that we're dealing with. So the other thing is that people were hoarding, right? So the whole idea, that we saw Christmas this time of year. So take away the spring cleaning, and then you look and you say, okay, everybody went to the grocery stores, right? I mean, like if you look 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, the entire country was out shopping, buying as much toilet paper as everybody jokes about, but toilet paper and sanitizer and all these other things. And not now everybody's ordering all that product to their house. So we're going to have a ton of cardboard and other pieces. But if you mix that amount of curbside recycling that's going to come through, just theoretically, causes more issues. You don't have spring break, so there's, nobody's on vacation during this time. So again, all that does is add to it. You have 132 schools that are closing, or 132,000 across the country. So normally, kids will clean out their lockers. Well, now you're not going to have that. You're going to have, a janitor who's going to walk down the hallway and with a large bin and basically clean out a lot of these lockers, right? How many lithium-ion batteries are inside all of those lockers, right? So all that stuff's going to get taken over the next 2 months and dumped into the, into a different stream than it typically normally would be. And again, we're putting it in the public, which is the place where recycling is the least. So again, all these different things. And so, again, from a potential risk, it's the curbside recycling, it's less drop-off points. This is going to affect the overall numbers like we've never seen before, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe it'll be quiet and maybe we won't have any fires. But again, when I look at all the different, my gut's going to tell me that this is, April's normally one of our slowest months, right? I mean, in 18, we had a spike, and again, that was a lot of metal. But, and last year, we had a decent amount. So it's really what's going to happen in these, I'm definitely looking and checking. And I'll keep my eye on it for everybody who's interested in seeing it. So again, I think we all know there's an inherent risk of fires in our operations, right? Now, again, what can we do about it? What are the consequences? Injuries, last year we saw a rash of injuries, and again, these are reported injuries. These are injuries that were reported in the media. So when I look at it, for some reason we saw, and a lot of these were to the fire professionals. So a lot of it was, we had an extremely hot summer. You had fire professionals that were outside fighting fires. Every 45 minutes, they would spray them down and let them shower. But, a lot of this was heat exhaustion. Again, we're going to have hot summers, right? We all know that that's not going away. Deaths, we've typically had about 2 a year every year. And again, I think the idea of looking at injuries, of the number of incidences is something to look at. Somebody have a question? All right, maybe it's just someone who's jumping on. Okay, so again, I think the other consequences are market. Like we have insurers that are running out of the industry, and 18 was really when they started to, like, everyone knew there was an issue coming. In 18, I mean, that's really when they took off. And again, I spend a ton of my time, Lindsay and Will and Fire Rover as a whole, as an organization, we spend a ton of our time working with insurance companies. I know there's a lot of insurers on the phone. fire professionals that are working at insurance companies. Again, I'm trying to bring them back and try to like let them know that there is a way to mitigate your risk. There is a way to mitigate your risk profile. And I think that's really the important thing. So, as like we're working currently on 3 or 4 different programs with insurance companies that have worked, right? There's specific areas in the country where, if the solution is a couple different things, and I'll get into that. But again, the goal is really to educate insurance companies to let them understand that there is risk or the risk can be mitigated in this system. Now, again, this is where there's an inherent risk of fires in our operations, right? Good operators are definitely going to have less fires than bad operators, right? I mean, that's clear. So, if you're running with high, if you're keeping piles at 40, 50 feet, you're going to have a better chance of having a fire than if you have segregated piles at 10 feet. So, there's a lot of these things are really just looking at best practices. So this was, again, Nathan's data specifically. And if you look at 18, shredder fires, the claims went up by 40 claims. These were just the top 5 insurance companies. Lithium-ion batteries were up by 20. So when people say, hey, like we don't want to bring awareness to the industry, well, the awareness is there. It's through the claims numbers, right? I mean, this is showing like actual data, right? So again, I think the whole idea is that the insurance companies are going to know and they're going to run. Now, how do we get them back? Because we need good insurance and we need affordable rates to have a solid industry. So that's something that all of us who are on the phone have to work towards. Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of this, but everybody's seeing that like their moderate losses, catastrophic losses. If you're having issues, you may be uninsurable. Again, this comes from Nathan, not from myself, and I don't mean to say it as to throw, but like everybody's kind of seeing all these different things that are happening. So again, what's the most important thing anyone can do is develop a fire safety plan. Whether you call it a disaster recovery plan, whether you call it a fire safety plan, whether you call it fire planning, I don't care what you call it. All I know is that I've spoke to a ton of insurers that used to check the box, right? They'd come in and they'd say, hey, do you have a safety plan? Yes. Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Yes, check. Well, now a lot of the fire engineers that are coming through are auditing and making sure that these things are actually happening and they have some teeth. So, the days of just saying that you have a plan is not going to work, right? I know ISRI came out with a suggested plan, that if you're an ISRI member, you can get access to it. I think a lot of SWANA's come out with the waste to energy. A lot of people have come out with these plans, or a lot of the associations. And again, I'm on board with all of them, right? From my perspective, like there's no plan that works better than any other plan except plan, right? Period. So I actually work with Jim Emerson with Star Technologies. They're one of the large insurance companies. And, he was fortunate to be one of the guys that was on a couple pretty large payouts, right? And he was the one who did the audits and looked at it and was like, like, are these guys doing the things that they say that they're going to do? So what we developed was based on experience of myself and of Jim, just going through waste and recycling facilities, a combinational approach, which again, it's not rocket science, right? Best people, practices, and equipment, and communication and training in order to provide your operations the best chance of catching and eliminating a fire before it becomes a major fire incident and shuts down your business. So, I'll share this. I'm not going to go into this specifically. I mean, Jim, actually, I believe he'll be at Waste 360 as well, or at Waste Expo with Ronald and myself. But again, like there are specific things that work. And yes, I work for Fire Rover, right? We have a patented solution that, we have put out over 200 fires over the last year. Is that part of it? Yeah, it is, right? But at the same time, we know that it works. Now, do you need to have Fire Rover? Yes or no? Do you need to have certain aspects of it? Yes or no? So again, it depends on the size, the operation, and so many different factors. So again, I would never come here and say the only solution out there is our system, right? Our system does work, and I'm going to get into that. At the same time, planning is really the most important piece. So when I look at this, is actually like what I've developed is basically where I see the opportunity for all of us to do a better job, right? And on the prevention side, this is planning, right? So you as an operator need to minimize the amount of issues that you have, whether it's through pre-sorting or education or training or all the different things you can do. And the professional response, you have a responsibility, or an operator has a responsibility with that, right? Work with your fire department so when they come on site, they know how to get in if it's 2 in the morning, right? Make sure that you have fire equipment in place. So, whether a lot of our customers will potentially, or our clients, they'll actually have a fire hose that's under lock and key. And when the fire department's coming, you basically roll out the fire hose with a Lancer nozzle on it, and you basically have it ready. So when the fire department gets there, you need to give the fire department every excuse not to, or you want to eliminate every excuse for them not to go fight a fire. Um, so the whole idea is the more they're comfortable with your location, the more they're comfortable with the spaces, the more they understand, the ins and outs of your facility and what's in your operation, the more they're going to be apt to put their lives on risk to actually go in and fight the fires. Now, where we have an opportunity is the internal response. How fast can you detect a fire, and how fast can you put it out, right? So this is where I believe the real opportunity is from what we provide. And again, we do not believe that there aren't going to be fires, right? We know there are fires. There's an inherent risk of fire in what we do. I think everybody out there has admitted it and understands it. The question is, how do we guarantee that there's not a major fire incident? How do we guarantee that no one gets hurt, your employees stay safe, right? That your equipment, is safe, your building's safe, and most importantly, you can continue to run. And so again, if you catch it in the incipient stage, the smoldering stage, the flame stage, if you catch it fire, the goal is, again, don't have a major fire incident. The pre-incipient stage, this is where, like in ASR piles or in preemptive maintenance for equipment, I'll show you guys some things that we're doing. But the whole idea is I want to catch it as early as I can, and I want to make sure that I catch it. And if I can catch it earlier, and set the tripwire earlier in the process, like a rubber fire, if I can catch it 7 days earlier or trends in it, then potentially we can, take care of it. Some things like a lithium-ion battery, like you're probably not going to catch it before, it starts to heat. At the same time, you got to catch it early enough before it hits thermal runoff. And I'll show a bunch of videos on that, and then obviously Ronald Butler's going to get into those more. But really, what our system is it's a 20 by 8 by 8 container. This is our basic system. We actually have 4 different new solutions that we've developed over the last 5 years, but basically it's a 20 by 8 by 8 container. It just needs internet, electricity, and it's got a 1,000-gallon tank. If this is an outdoor operation, which we have 150 locations, half of them are outdoor, half of them are indoor. Typically, there's a 22-foot mast on an outdoor operation. This is what an indoor operation looks like. We'll have typically inside a facility, and again, you can look at other options, but really, at the end of the day, what we do is provide, we provide a unique solution to an industrial building, right? Sprinkler systems are still the greatest invention ever made, right? They're unbelievable for high-rise buildings and for office buildings. But when you have a 40 to 50-foot building, when you have like open spaces where you have line of sight, like most of our facilities are, or you're dealing with an outdoor facility or processing, or an indoor-outdoor processing, this is where you really get, that this type of solution really works well. So again, we have a 22-foot mast on the outside. We can hook the cameras and nozzles. If you're looking at an inside, we're going to custom plumb these outdoors, or we'll put it on equipment, under equipment. We'll make sure that it doesn't take up precious space. And again, it'll shoot for 8 to 12 minutes. So one of the things that we've done is that these are like the different solutions, right? We do a thermal only, which then you guys are responsible. The fire department would be responsible for putting a fire out. We have the Fire Rover traditional solution where we'll shoot for 6 to 12 minutes. We have the sprinkler replacement solution where, we have about 100 of our sites are actually, they are the only source of fire protection inside these facilities. We have had certain facilities that have been approved with variances, where we've been offered in lieu of a sprinkler system. And so, when we do the sprinkler replacement, we do a couple of these lithium-ion battery facilities. When we do the sprinkler replacement, we put a manifold off the back, and there's a quick connect from the fire department where they can connect and they can continuously shoot. So that 6 to 12 minutes will extend for as long as there's water. Then also we do the fire rover deluge system, which this is interesting for the waste to energy facilities, also for an outdoor paper operations, or areas where you already have fire protection, but we basically use our system where we're using thermal cameras, we're trending heat, it goes back to our central station. The key thing is that a human being is looking at these. Our UL certified facility is looking at these, verifying, and then shooting a environmentally friendly cooling foam onto these units. So this is an example. Typically, we'll have a 4-camera operation. We'll have a thermal camera. We have this is our nitrogen powered tanks. And so you'll see we're actually, a human being is looking at this. There's a joystick and they are controlling the fire. Okay, so this is our demo location in Detroit. Typically when we have an outdoor operation like this, we can shoot the effective range about 150 feet. So it's 140, 150. But again, obviously outdoors, we're dealing with elements as well. So just give this a couple seconds. You'll see this will give you the distance on how far we can actually shoot. So when we're dealing with a MRF, so one of the things is we can see in darkness, and we also can see with smoke. So I think the idea, this is a facility, obviously a tip floor. There was a fire that started in the infeed, and so I'll show you an upfront view of a different location. But what happens is, these buildings fill with smoke relatively quickly, and most operators don't want to have their employees responsible for that front line, putting fires out. And again, sprinkler systems, you have to be 6 feet away, or fire extinguishers, you have to be about 6 feet away, and they only last for a little bit of time. Again, we see the fire. You're going to see this is our nozzle cam. That's a human being remotely putting environmentally friendly cooling agent or a wetting agent on it, and then they put it in the inside, like they put it on the outside, because this fire actually happened on the outside. And you just saw now they're literally draining it right into the infeed drum. So the beauty of our system too, we don't reset. So what ends up happening is that we will shoot, and this, we probably shot 10% of the tank. We'll come out on site and refill the tank when we need to. Now this is an infeed conveyor. This is a different operation, but so what we're doing here is, if we see an issue, if it's overheating from a preemptive maintenance perspective, we'll let our customer know. They'll shut this down and they'll remove whatever abnormalities inside. But we also have a couple different things here, right? One, this started a fire. If you can see, if a fire starts, we'll shut down the entire system so that you don't have all the conveyors are shut down so that the fire can't go into other locations. So you're housing it to the one location. We're going to see our box fill. This right here, you're actually going to see 2 guys. These are sprinkler system, or these are fire extinguishers, which is, again, only poking the bear, making a mess. They get down, and then we're going to start shooting our system in a second, and we'll have this fire out relatively quickly. Now, again, had we not had to wait for 2 employees to use their fire extinguishers, this thing would have been out well before it got to this size. But you'll see, there we go. So a lot of, the hardest part about what we do is looking at depth. So you'll always see a thermal camera, and you'll see a couple HD cameras on each camera. And the reason we do that is because we have to actually see depth from a perspective that is unique to every camera that we use. All right, this is a lithium-ion battery explosion example. This was actually middle of the night, one of our operations, and you see that? Literally, lithium-ion battery explodes. There's also a rat over here. If you see that, it's kind of fun sometimes to watch these videos. But you'll see. So there you go. So that was a lithium-ion battery. It exploded. And again, before our system, as you can imagine, fire forensics comes in. They don't know what caused fires, right? So a lot of people, I think, will falsely blame the lithium-ion batteries. There's still other things that cause these. But when half a tip floor burns down, the only way to figure out what caused it is is by kind of looking at what the pieces were, the charred remains, right? Now, again, we have a front row seat and we cool it, so then we know exactly what caused it. So that's why, I think sharing all these videos, and a lot of our customers are extremely, they're extremely positive about us sharing these. And the reason they do that is because, again, safety knows no competition, right? Like, they want everybody to learn from mistakes or issues that have happened. And again, this isn't something you guys did wrong, right? I mean, you can't pull lithium-ion batteries. You can try to limit it. We can try to educate, but I mean, this problem is going to be with us for a long time. Again, that puts it out. This was a deep-seated fire on a tip floor. So again, we see it. It goes back to our central station. And one of the things, I mean, the hardest thing for our agents to do is when they're looking at a fire, the hardest thing for them, I mean, they're clearing false alarms all the time. I mean, so a lot of people think, oh, hey, thermal cameras, they're amazing. I'm just going to go buy one. And, we've had some customers now in the past try to buy these cameras. They're not plug and play operations. And one of the things that, you got to look at is there's a ton of false alarms because we have such active locations. If you're doing a storage facility and there's really no movement in there, yeah, of course it's a lot easier, right? But when you're dealing with a forklift and you're dealing with active locations, and shredders and other things. So this was actually a deep-seated fire. We're going to hit this, and we're literally going to empty the tank. And then the fire department actually came, and the beauty again is that we have built-in fire watch, right? If anyone's on, if you could mute your phones, that would be awesome. I can hear someone, some background noise. If you don't mind muting your phones, but as you can see, we'll hit this, and then we'll also have, we call the fire department at the same time, and we're able to have it out before the fire department arrived. And then the next day, I mean, we still have the fire watch. If something goes wrong, we can work with the fire department or work with our clients on scene. That video froze at some point, so there it goes. Okay. So, again, just to show you how targeted we really are, this is a chemical operation. This is a hazard material operation, which we do a ton of these. But, as you can see, this is a chemical reaction. I have another video where literally one of these drums literally just exploded, right? But what you'll see here, and what's nice, is that we can actually spray the fifth pallet. So you'll see one of the employees in his bunny suit. He's waiting for the go ahead, but like on the thermal camera, do you see how targeted we are? And again, this is not it's definitely an art, not a science. So we're able to spray that, and then we know that if there's an all clear, because we know that there is no heat signature. So then they can take it out and deal with the problem specifically. This is a rubber feedstock pile. I'm going to show you another example from this as well, but this was rubber, 3,000-degree fire. We had it out in 4.5 minutes before the fire department was able to arrive on scene. So, this is on YouTube as well if you want to see it. I can't show the whole video, but what's nice too is we use an encapsulator agent. It's environmentally friendly. It's a wetting agent. And what's nice is, unlike foams, when you're using a foam, with lithium-ion batteries, they create their own oxygen. So the problem is, if you blanket a foam, a lithium-ion battery fire, you really have to soak it to get it to actually cool, because it creates its own oxygen. So you can't devoid it of oxygen using a foam tank like you can, or using the foam like you can with other fires. So what you're seeing here is we're able to actually, each one of these water droplets it has a reverse polarity around it, so it's not treated like a water droplet, and so we're able to fog it on, and so it works like a Pac-Man to continuously put the fire out, right? And so we'll have this out. We still have 40% left of our tank. The fire department's arrived, and we put this fire out. So, and one of the things, I actually just added this video, which just is kind of, where is it today? Oh, here it is. It's right there. So this is one that I just added today, and I'll extend it. But basically, this was the shredder, which was, so I actually extended this. I'm starting to make these faster because people, don't have a ton of time to sit and watch a 5-minute video. But, we were able to have this fire out in the shredder. And again, of course, our guys on scene are putting stuff in it, but you can see, I mean, we're able to hit, that's 150 feet where we're able to hit, and basically that's the rubber shredder at the same location. So it's hard to see with the light, but that's the stream. And there's another angle. Again, it doesn't look like it's hitting the depth, but I mean, that's actually the same video as what you just saw before. This is, so we do a ton of hazard material. I mean, I like to show this video just because it's, it shows how dusty operations are. And again, like with our system, we come out, we clean it, we make sure that it's working. We have a heartbeat with the system. So really, watch this guy. So you see how dusty it is in this operation. And again, these are different for hazard materials. What we're doing with these pits is, when they're not operating, there's really no chance of fire in these pits. What's happening is what, when they're under operations, we're able to look at it and make sure that it doesn't go above a certain heat level. And then when it does, we're there to help them with the protection. So like sometimes they'll come in and actually the bulldozers will come in and put sand in as well as us spraying. So, there's a bunch of different options. I'm not sure, this is running very slow. So, but as you can see us spraying it. And again, if it's dark, middle of the night, if it's full of smoke, we're used to these environments. And again, let's do a couple scrap metal. Like here's a scrap metal shredder incident. This was an explosion in a scrap metal facility. Now, what ended up happening is a lot of times you'll see these explosions, but it'll run into the ASR pile. So, and then, we'll deal with it. We know there's an issue. Obviously, we called, make sure, hey guys, so they're going to start bringing their crane over. And so we'll literally start to move and take care of the fire over here. So what I did was I sped this part up. The first part I left so you could see the explosion, but then this is the, us on the ASR pile. So what ends up happening is, again, they're going to come in, we put a layer, we pre-wet it, and then it's just like a deep-seated fire. You're not supposed to open oxygen to a deep-seated fire. That's one of the biggest mistakes that I see made, is that, you basically bring a loader in and you pull it out and you basically open it to oxygen. You're supposed to pre-wet it. So when we use our encapsulator agent, it makes it so that the material around it can't burn. And then once you have it under control, that's when you go in and you start to take a loader and you start to basically take layer by layer off. And there are a lot of times you'll have fires again as you continue to take the layers off. So that's what you're seeing in this operation. This is a scrap metal. This is an ASR incident. So again, we do a ton of ASR piles, and I will say ASR. I mean, I have one video that I don't have here, but like we'll catch hotspots all day, right? We'll shoot for like 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, 10 seconds. And, we'll just, a lot of times we can catch ASR piles before, or we can catch thermal events in ASR piles. And, what's nice, again, it's with our system, we'll literally catch even the big ones, sure. But the little guys where, we're constantly applying just a little bit of material all the time, it's a pretty good operation, and it saves someone coming over every time that there is a fire. So again, this is one of our systems I was showing you before. We can put this on top of equipment. Ton of different types of operations, specialized hazards. This is really nice because when we're putting a system in, we can basically look at Google Earth and sit down and kind of figure out the equipment. This was actually designed to to use our system in lieu of a sprinkler system on a conveyors, like it's a 4-story conveyor system. this one hasn't been put in yet, but I mean, we have a lot of flexibility on things that we can do, to help our customers from a fire protection perspective. We also have enforcers, so a lot of times these are used. They're basically mini fire rovers. And what's nice is, if you're going to do it yourself, or we have a lot of operations where we'll have a box and a camera with the Elimination, the typical fire rover system in certain parts of the building, and other parts will just have cameras. And again, to have a unit like this that you can throw on shoot for 6 minutes or 4 to 6 minutes, you can shoot at about 70, 80 feet. One of the big things, my biggest pet peeve, don't give an employee a fire frickin' extinguisher and have him stand 6 feet away to shoot it. Let him shoot it from a safe distance. That's the goal, right? Let him shoot it from 50 feet away and make sure it's an environmentally friendly foam or environmentally friendly cooling agent that, is made for this type of application. I think, again, and I can show other videos if you guys are interested. Someone just asked, why are there more fires in scrap metal facilities? Virginia, can you ask that question? I'm not sure when you say more fires. Virginia?
Yeah, just from your statistics, it seemed like there were more fires in scrap metal facilities, and I'm new to this topic, so I just wondered why that is.
Well, again,
people are contaminating it with lithium-ion.
Well, I think what's happening, there's a couple different things, right? Lithium-ion batteries can get small and they can get through the operation, so they get into the ASR pile. We also see where like hot pieces of ferrous metal will actually get through the conveyors and dump into the ASR piles. So it just really depends on the operation. I think, again, if a car explodes, right, or crashes, and you bring it in and you're going to dismantle it, in the old days, the only hazard you had to worry about was to make sure that the oil was out, the lubrication and the gasoline was emptied from the car. Right now, you have 50 Juul cigarettes that are under the seats and hidden everywhere, ear pods and all the other things. So again, just like lithium-ion batteries have taken over in a lot of different locations, that's part of why. If there's anyone on the phone that wants to answer that as well, that'd be awesome. But let me kind of throw the annual report that I put together. If you guys want a copy of that has all the data from the states. So if there's anyone on the phone from the states perspective, feel free to to let me know, or it's actually on LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn profile. And again, I also want to say Ron Butler's on. We're going to have him talk about lithium-ion batteries, why they fail, next week. So if you guys want to join next week, that'd be awesome. But again, I'm going to open it up at this point to questions. And again, if there's other videos you want to see, I'm happy to walk through them or to go back. Happy to do it. But I appreciate everybody for showing up and spending, this 50 minutes. I hope it was educational. You guys have any questions or anything, or because I'll be on for the next 10 minutes if you guys have questions. Nothing? It was that great of a presentation. I answered everybody's questions. Cool. I think I see one more. Thanks, Ronald. I appreciate you saying that. Sam, we are looking forward to setting you up as well. So we have people working on it, and glad we're through the MSA and all those things. So, and yes, Lisa, I'd be happy to send out a link. I will be happy to send out a link to all these. Oh, sorry, Virginia, ASR is auto shredder residue. So it's, think of any of the metals that aren't in a car, it's all the other pieces. So carpet, fiber, and then typically it is flammable because you do have, the oils and the lubricants, hopefully not gasoline at that point, but you do have flammable materials in there. Oh, and Virginia, please, new to topic is more than fine. What are the questions we got, guys?
Hey,
yep.
Quick, I don't really have a question, but this is a new topic to me as well. I'm in the waste business, but the chemical stuff. But this was very, very informative. I really enjoyed it.
No, thanks, Ron. I mean, I appreciate it. And listen, I'd love to understand, what you're working on specifically. So feel free to send anything, and let's set up some time to connect as well. Because so when you say you do just chemical, what does that mean specifically?
Hazardous waste.
Oh yeah, you do hazmat. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And well, one of the big things that I've seen in the hazardous waste industry in the past few years is they are hyper concerned about lithium metal. They've changed all of the packaging and the disposal requirements, even the transportation for lithium metals, because hey, several facilities have been like damaged or completely destroyed by lithium metal trucks too, by the way. So it's a big concern in the hazardous waste industry.
Absolutely, and that's where, I mean, we're fortunate. I mean, a few of our customers are in hazard materials. I mean, we have one facility. I think you're in Texas. We have a facility in Texas that has 6 or 5 fire rovers, 5 boxes, I believe. So, we're doing a ton of different areas. And I think from our perspective, I think, we're always looking for the applications, and we've been blessed by waste and recycling. I mean, there's a need, but really the goal for us is to understand what other applications are out there, as we build out, the suite of services that we're offering under our patent. Jim Shaw just thought, thanks, Matt. Thanks, interesting info. I appreciate it. Call to Recycle, the primary location for recycling rechargeable batteries, to continue to educate the public on correct recycling. Jim, I agree with you 100%. So yes, I mean, educating the public is going to be the best way to cut the amount of lithium-ion batteries in our waste stream. The problem is that lithium-ion batteries are growing and compounding at such a level, and I'm sure Ronald will get into this next week, that it's almost like for every step forward, we take 2 steps back. But yes, I 100% agree with you. You guys do great work. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, well, guys, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. You can always reach out to me offline. And listen, stay safe, and enjoy being in your homes with your kids. If you have kids, if not, enjoy being in your homes with yourself. So I know this is kind of to me, it's like kind of like Christmas break with it's like Christmas break without the obligations. So actually, it's anti-obligations. You don't have to go out, and you have a good excuse. So I'll talk to you guys. Hopefully see you all next week. Bye.